Hello? Your Health is Calling, where holistic health meets practical solutions for your well being. With your host, speaker, New York Times bestselling author, Sue Kostyk, a seasoned holistic health practitioner and longevity coach. Join Sue each week to embark on a journey to uncover the root causes of your health concerns. Through a personalized approach, learn how to decode the messages your body is sending and craft natural protocols to address them. Call in live at 888-994-4995 Studio A.
Good morning and welcome to Hello, Your Health is Calling. I'm Sue Kostyk. I am an integrative health practitioner. And before I bring on my guest today, I just want to talk a little bit about integrative health and what that means. It is a holistic approach to longevity, really. So much of the time we just wait until something happens, we have some symptoms before we start thinking about our health. And in integrative health, it's an approach to not wait and not just to think about your health and your well-being as a whole, as your body, mind, and spirit, before it's too late and before you have to get that help. So it's really deep dive, root cause. We figure out why you're having the symptoms, not just try to put a Band-Aid on the symptoms so you feel better. It's really about figuring out why the symptoms showed up, what the deficiencies are, what the overgrowth is, where you need some help, and we fix that part so that you don't have the symptoms and that you don't have to go on the medications to cover up the symptoms. So that's integrative health in a nutshell. I can always be reached at support at Hello, Your Health is Calling and talk further about this. But I'm really excited about my show this morning. I have a very special guest. She started out as a business coach and life coach, and she's become a good friend. Our lives are very parallel. And she is actually the founder of the Reinvented Life Network. Her whole business approach is about the reinvented life and how you can basically start over if you need to, or where you can go from where you are. And we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about what I spoke about earlier and longevity and how we can take our health as an approach not to wait until we have symptoms and we need to figure out what's going on, but how we can be proactive and we can self advocate throughout our whole life journey and health journeys. So, without further ado, I'd like to bring on Pamela Chanel David, and we're going to just have a conversation. Welcome.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here and thank you for having me on the show today.
Oh gosh, it's going to be fun, and we have a lot to talk about, don't we?
Sure do.
We do. Well, first of all, tell the audience a little bit about you and and then maybe kind of get to the point where we are today and why we decided that we were going to do this show.
Yeah, well, I'm going to shorten that because I don't want to take the whole show with me. But what I will say is, I come from a corporate background and made my way eventually after a couple decades into entrepreneurship, which is where I find myself today, and not just in entrepreneurship, but actually supporting it and coaching people primarily in that transition from the corporate arena to their entrepreneurship journey and to their business journey along the way. And it's been a decade now. 10 years ago, I found myself in a dire health crisis. I think I had paid attention and know I paid attention to everything in my life except for myself. And I literally had abandoned my health. And that's really where this piece of my journey started. I was given less than a year to live by my physician, given how dire I had ignored literally my health. And in hindsight, completely abandoned the connection of my body and who I was. So I just went on with my days, I went on with my years, and found myself in that dire place. And so,
Yeah.
to what you're talking about today on this show, and what Hello, Your Health is Calling is all about, is how do we maintain charge of the empowerment of our own health? And um, in the journey over the last decade of reclaiming my health, um, finding myself having lost 170 odd pounds at this point, infusing fitness into my life, infusing better eating into my life, and just turning everything around over the course of the last 10 years. That really brings me up to where I am today. And over this past, gosh, now 7, 8 months, found myself in another health crisis, and really approaching it in the same way: is
Yeah.
what can I do to find the origins and not just patch up what's going on, but I have a real disalignment at this point, misalignment, I guess I should say, in my body due to a foot injury. And now I have a whole misalignment on the other part of my
Yeah.
body. So I'm back in a healing mode. And it's perfect here.
Yeah, and that, when we were talking a day ago or whatever day it was,
Yeah.
just talking about paying attention. And this is what this show is all about. It's really about paying attention to what's going on and listening to the signs that your body gives you. A lot of people that come to me do make a comment that they wish they had paid attention. And I talk about this all the time. I talk about the check engine light in our car and how it's the same as our body. You know, when we get a symptom, our body's not messing up. It's telling us something. It's like sometimes it's a whisper and sometimes it's a scream. But, it is telling us something. It's not messing up. Our body is made for one thing and one thing only, and that's to survive. And we have functions, we have systems. And when one system isn't working, then another system has to work overtime and kind of rob Peter to pay Paul until there's nothing left. And so paying attention, making sure that when that check engine light of your body comes on, we're not still driving around hoping on a hope and a prayer that things are just going to go away and that light's going to turn off or that symptom's going to go away. And not that with your foot injury and stuff, I don't think that, that was not paying attention. I think that that was more of a self-advocation thing that we've been talking about. And when you are presented with an issue and you start depending on people who are human and that, yes, they have a degree and they've done a lot of schooling and everything, but they are human. And a medical professional once told me that, medicine is a practice. There's not any real cut and dry thing. So um, when we talk about self advocacy, and you've had to do a lot of this, and that's why I think that this is a great time to start talking about that as well. And let's talk a little bit about what you had, what you experienced, and how you have put yourself in a position of advocating for yourself
Yeah.
going through this journey.
Well, it has been such a journey. In late January of this year, so we're talking, 7 months ago or so at this point. Um, I was just walking, and sort of my foot turned a little bit, my right foot, didn't think much of it. I didn't fall. But immediately pain started, right? And so I recognized and shortly found out that I had actually broken the outside of my right foot, because our tendons and ligaments are so embroiled that it just pulled the bone and the pressure. And, I just approached it, as you're just saying, of, trusting, if you will. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of trust that goes on
Yeah.
in our medical profession. And
Mhm.
so I trusted who I was seeing to treat this injury. And so I was very focused on treating that injury. I was put in a boot, and eventually that healed. But I was in that boot for 15 or 16 weeks.
Mhm.
And I just followed what they said. And
Mhm.
this is where the self advocacy comes in, because I didn't ask the questions, why so
Mhm.
long? I didn't ask the questions, can I do this in moderation? And in that 15, 16 weeks, which is a long time, I think it went maybe even into 17 weeks, what I've come to find out is that there was undue pressure on the other
Mhm.
side of my
Yeah.
body. So, although the focus on healing the outside bone of my right foot has healed beautifully,
Mhm.
but it has caused a succession to the point that I cannot walk anymore unassisted without a walker. At that, I can barely walk. It's very clunky. It's not a normal gait. And I have a pelvis that is now completely misaligned and a
Mhm.
left foot that is completely flattened with
Yeah.
no arch.
Yeah.
So I share all that because I didn't think about, and I
Mhm.
think this is true for a lot of people, when, like you say, one aspect of your body is injured, what toll is it taking on another?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
it's an integrative process.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I talk so much about the gut brain connection and how our body is literally a whole that
Mhm.
operates, with all of these little helpers. And when one part isn't operating, then everybody else has to just dig in a little bit harder. And, going back to, self advocacy and things like that, it's like, we have our gut sends us signals of emotion as well.
Yes.
And when you're in a situation that you don't really know about because you're not a medical professional, um, sometimes your gut is letting you know that something's a little bit off, that maybe you should start asking questions. And I know that a lot of people have said, well, I don't want to offend them. I don't want to ask questions because I don't want to offend them. And with my daughter, having cancer when she was little, I remember feeling the same way. It's like, even though I felt a little bit uncertain about what was going on, I didn't want to offend them and ask questions. But, as a paying consumer of medical help,
Yeah.
if you were buying a car, you would ask questions about the car. If you were, purchasing, a house, you would ask questions about the house. So, it just goes to the fact of, you know, you've got to listen to your gut. You've got to understand those feelings that you are getting because you're getting them for a reason. And, acting upon them and not worrying about, you don't have to be rude about the questions, but, I believe that most medical professionals invite questions. I know that there are some that don't, but, in your case, I'm sure that he would have, possibly, I don't know.
Well, and sometimes the questions don't come up until something's not feeling right.
Right. Right.
So, as that boot came off and I was thrilled
Hmm.
about the healing and focused on that, there started to be a little bit of pain on the other side of my body.
Hmm.
And when I started feeling that pain and I couldn't step down, it was like something's wrong. That's when the questions started.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it went from a gradual little pain to a little more pain to a little more pain. And as it turned out, the most excruciating,
Mhm.
debilitating, I couldn't function
Yeah.
pain in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I realized is the body did give those signals. It did give
Mhm.
the check engine light.
Yeah.
And I was kept going back to the same professional, which was
Mhm.
just really responsible for the healing of my foot. And
Mhm.
so it was in the inquiry of having to then find other professionals and go through the process of elimination of, is there a spine injury, is there what, and
Mhm.
bottom line is there's a structural injury with me that was
Mhm.
increasingly putting pressure on the pain, which then, I mean, excuse me, on the nerves, which then
Right.
ultimately,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think this is so important, this engine light. And I
Mhm.
think it's so important for people to realize that, especially in Western medicine. It
Mhm.
talks about the healthcare system all the time.
Right.
It's really the sick care system.
Oh,
And it is not
1000%.
and it is not until
Mhm.
you infuse other things
Mhm.
that I have, which is other approaches, other modalities,
Mhm.
spiritual even
Yeah.
approaches, that this true healing has started.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it
for
really
sure.
leads right into the work you do.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about, you and I are both of the same age. And we talk about, I laugh because everybody in the spring is getting ready for their beach body, and everything. I'm like, how about we start focusing on our 80-year-old body? How about we not worry about just doing something for a couple months so we look good in a bathing suit? And that just, we can probably go into a whole new topic here, but you and I both went through situations where our health was bad. We were
Right.
told we needed, handfuls of medications, and yet we found more of a holistic way of dealing with it. Now, for you, it's been about a decade. For me, it's been, maybe a little bit less than that. But if we had taken care of ourselves prior
Right.
to that point,
Exactly.
perhaps there wouldn't be things showing up later in our lives. And
Exactly.
when I say perhaps, it's like it's 100% going to happen. If you abuse yourself in your 30s, something's going to show up in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. I mean, it's just the way it goes. And I know we have kind of a maybe an older audience, but I plead with younger people to take care of yourselves. And that's not like you can't ever have a glass of wine, or you can't ever, stay up all night partying. It's like, but when you focus on your health as an 80%
Yeah.
versus focusing on your health as a 20% when you're young because you feel good and you rebound quick, it's like if you could just look inside your body and at your liver and see what damage is being done, but you're
Mhm.
still operating because one operating system is taking over for another, but then when you get to a certain age, it can't do it anymore. So all
Yeah.
these diseases, and they call them aging. It's like, no, you're aging, so you just have to live with high blood pressure and diabetes, and all these things that are coming about. So it's like, that's why I feel so strongly about this show and educating the public about holistic health and the things that you can do, and eliminating toxicities and having good nutrition. And you and I both talk about this forever and a day. That is so important.
Yeah, it is so important. And I love how you talk about, we're really working right now for 20 years in our future, right?
Mm,
So I love that
yeah.
you talk about the 80-year-old self, or as you mentioned, the 30 year, the 20, even 20, 30, 40
Mhm,
year old self. I focused on every single thing back in those years but me, right?
mhm,
In the sense that it was all about what I was doing in my work, or what it
Mhm.
was eventually I was doing as a parent or as a volunteer or as it just went on, and I was stacking up every single thing I was doing, but completely abandoned my health.
Yeah.
So I had the most major health crisis you can have in
Mhm.
my
Yeah.
early 50s. And
Yeah.
now a decade later, I look at it, and that's why what I'm going through, although physically as debilitating as it's
Mhm.
been, I'm now slowly but surely finding relief. And I know it is because over the last decade, I finally started paying attention
Right.
to my health. And this is
Mhm.
the biggest thing for people, that you don't have to wait till
Mhm.
something is wrong. In
Right.
fact, you can keep looking at empowering yourself and bettering yourself at any stage, because you've mentioned it already. We just live and breathe and walk outside and we've got toxins. Or,
Right.
or even if we're
Mhm.
eating the best food we can find,
Mhm.
there's still toxins
Mhm.
in that
Yeah.
food and in that soil and in that food chain.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I just love that when you do for yourself first, you're
Mhm.
actually helping yourself and those around you to a greater
Right.
degree. And I don't believe in my journey and what I've learned that it's commonplace for people to want to put themselves first.
No.
It's not
Mhm.
commonplace for people to want to do for themselves first,
Mhm.
because there's a misinterpretation, a conditioning
Right.
that's taken place over time, that that's not the right thing to do, right? It's
Right.
do for others first. And
Right.
so before you can address your health, it's really taking a look at some of the mindset of how
Mhm.
you're conducting your life, and the
Mhm.
realization that it's okay to do that, that it's not
Yeah.
the wrong thing to do. If you operate from the fullest cup, if you operate from the
Mhm.
greatest strength, you're going to be most helpful in your own
Right.
life, your families, your
Yeah.
communities around
Right. There's a lot of truth. We throw that around so much. There's a lot of truth to the airline announcement to put your mask on first and
you,
then
right?
assist those around you. And, it seems we've been taught. I know I was raised to think of others first
Mhm.
and watched my mom serve everybody around her except herself. And so we're kind of raised with that. And, one of the things that I learned very quickly, especially going through the illness with my daughter, is that you need other people. You need others to help you. It's not shameful to ask for help. And it's not shameful to take a moment for yourself and just kind of recalibrate and get your mind right. And, it's our body will hold on to stress and it will remember stress. And then all of a sudden, you're in a situation that you can't function anymore. And, the whole we could that's a whole other rabbit hole we're not going to go down today.
But it's really important to bring this up, and it all boils down to this acronym that you know everyone tends to live by, in this belief that it's better to give than to receive.
Hmm. Yeah.
And this is something that's so commonplace. Everyone mentions it. The better that to give than to receive acronym is actually one of the most debilitating pieces in
Yeah.
our society,
Yeah.
because the act of receiving, and that is receiving for oneself, receiving from others, not only does it give others a chance to experience that giving, but it
Mm.
humbles us
Yeah.
and it keeps it all real. And so in the process of anytime someone has a crisis in their life and they're depending on others, they feel it that's a weakness, but in
Right.
reality, it's really
Hmm.
a strength.
Yeah.
And the number one healing modality takes into consideration the art really of receiving.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you bring that up, but it's so important when it comes to one's health because
Hmm.
in the reinvented life, my next iteration, my next book, my next everything, it's called The
Hmm.
Receiving Life
Oh,
because of exactly what you're talking about.
yeah. Yeah.
And
And
we need to learn that.
yes, we do. And I think women struggle with this so much more because we're women, we're mothers, we have careers, it's so hard for women, I think, to take a back seat and accept help. And that again is a whole other rabbit hole that we can go down, but it's, letting go of pride is really hard. I did, and I keep going back to when my daughter was sick, but, we were in a crisis. We had other kids at home, we were in a crisis, and, you know, I think my very first impression when people would say, let me do this, it was like, no, 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 I can do it. Because I didn't want people to think I was weak, that I couldn't handle this crisis on top of everything else. And it just came to the point where I had to say, I can't do it,
Yeah.
and then you're allowing, when other people want to help you, you're allowing them the gift of giving.
Yes, exactly.
And, when you tell people you don't need help, you're taking that away from them. You're taking away that gift that they want to give you. So, it's get the help. But,
Yeah.
getting back on our track, we also, one of the things that we talked about too is that taking care of your health is not for just people who are not well. It's for
Mhm.
people who lead an extremely healthy lifestyle. It's for people who exercise daily, who eat great, because keeping on top of your health and understanding, maybe through some functional lab testing, um, there's always going to be deficiencies, and there's always going to be places that you can work on. So if you are living in your best healthy life, it is very important to understand what's going on internally, because there will be one point that something's going to happen. I mean, it's inevitable. We walk out, like you said, we walk outside and we're bombarded with toxicity.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but, we actually are getting very near to our end, which is making me sad, but we could talk forever on this topic. And what is the one thing, what is the one thing that you would give to someone if you could, and encourage them in any kind of situation that they're dealing with their health?
Mhm. I would say to be very kind to yourself, to have a lot of grace and understand that things can take time, but being sure that they're focusing actually on the right part of their healing, which is the root cause of whatever it is they're going through. And so often things are just masked, medicated, band aided. And I would say be sure that you still ask all the questions and be sure that you trust. You talk about your gut, but you
Mhm.
trust what's going on within you to know really what's at the root cause and extend to every modality you
Mhm. Yeah. In fact, there's a couple of shows back that we did, and I had a guest on that does different modalities. She does physical therapy, cranial sacral therapy, Reiki, and there are other modalities that you can go to versus Western medicine. So we are sadly out of time. Thank you so much for coming on today. I think that we need another session So,
Well, it's my
we'll
pleasure,
do.
and thank you for having me on the show and bringing Hello, Your Health is Calling forward,
Mm,
because
yes,
the most critical thing we can do is be sure we're operating from strength.
absolutely. Thank you, Pamela. I really appreciate you. And thank you, everyone, for watching today. It was kind of a different show of just bantering back and forth and giving you some information. But please always feel free to reach out at support at Hello, Your Health is Calling. And if you have any questions, want any further information, the show is on YouTube at the Reinvented Life Network. And please go on there. If you're not on there right now, go on and like and follow so that you can always get these things sent right to you. So thank you for listening, and remember, if your health is calling, you need to answer it, really, so it's not screaming at you. So it's just a little whisper. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of Hello, Your Health is Calling with Sue Kostyk. Remember, your health journey is ongoing, and we're here to support you every step of the way. If you have any questions, insights, or stories to share, don't hesitate to reach out. You can connect with us on social media or call in live at 888-994-4995 Studio A. Together, we're transforming lives and embracing holistic well-being. Until next time, prioritize your health, and remember, your health is calling.